I'm just going to start. Yeah. Right. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Dorset Council's Licensing Committee. Can I remind all members that hopefully this might be live streamed, depending on whether we can get the technology to work. And can I also remind all members that when you are speaking, can you turn your microphones on and introduce yourselves, please? Thank you. I'm Councillor Emma Parker and I'm Chairman of Dorset Council's Licensing Committee, and with me I have my Vice Chairman, Councillor John Andrews. Officers involved in the meeting today, I've got John Newcombe, Service Manager, Licensing and Community Safety, Aileen Powell, Licensing Team Leader, Lara Autry, who is our Senior Lawyer, Elaine Tibble for Democratic Services, and John Miles from Democratic Services. Is that all officers covered? It is. Thank you. Do we have any apologies?
Yes, we have apologies from Councillors Les Fry, Cathy Lugg, David Morgan, Kate Weller and Sarah Williams.
Thank you. Minutes. To approve the minutes of the meeting of the 11th of October. Are you happy that those minutes are signed off as an accurate account of the meeting? Councillors, do you have any declarations of interest? And I'm having lots of heads shaking no, so we have no declarations of interest. Public participation, we don't have any public participation, we have no questions. So for agenda item 5, which is the statement of gambling licensing policy for 2024 to 2027, and I will now hand this over to John Newcombe for the introduction. Thanks, John.
Good morning, Chair. Thank you. Two items on the agenda for today. The first is our statement of gambling policy, which is up for review, 3-yearly review. Not a major rewrite, this one, so just a number of minor amendments. I think first off, I'd like to apologise that we weren't able to undertake a full 12-week consultation, which is our normal standard practice. That's entirely my error. I didn't realise we didn't have a full council meeting in January, and this policy needs to be in place before the 1st of February, so quite a relatively short consultation, but it was full and proper. It met the statutory requirements, and we did actually have a fairly good response to it. I've laid out all of the responses in the report, Chair. I'm happy to go through them and answer any questions. I have proposed a few amendments to the policy as a result. If I just briefly run through those with your permission. So 7 responses during the 4-week period. I've listed all of the responsible authorities that we consulted with, went out on a consultation plan as well, went out onto the website through our comms team, through town and parish council newsletters, and a proper sort of a consultation mechanism, which is now managed via the website. So the report is attached to appendices. So if I just quickly run through the changes that I'm proposing, Chair. So I've updated the contact details on page 2. I've made some minor grammatical amendments in sections 5.2 and 13.27. We had a really good response from our Pan Dorset Safeguarding Children's Partnership, which I was really pleased to read. As is the case quite regularly with gambling, our ability to make significant inroads into gambling addictions and gambling problems are slightly stifled by our regulatory role within the framework. But I've done what I can. I've added some additional text in at 1327, which I hope does reflect the main thrust of the concerns that were put to us. Anything that I think was beyond our regulatory remit, I've not included, but I'm happy to answer questions in relation to that. And then I think we had another point made, maybe from Lyme Regis Council, about our enforcement approach. So I've tweaked that slightly as well. But they're all fairly minor amendments. I think one of the responses which I did want to talk about briefly is just in relation to our gambling support services. Now, I think it's the first representation that's listed on the consultation document I'm hoping a former gambling addict, but the response actually says as a gambling addict, so maybe still in the throes of gambling addiction. And I did forward an email from, an article actually from The Guardian, just about the revised figures that the Gambling Commission have released recently. They kept quite quiet about those at the Institute of Licensing conference last week, but it would appear that gambling addiction is far more widespread than they first estimated, shall we say. And no surprise to many of us that see this, if not weekly, daily. And I think it's important that we take away this response and do something with it. So my proposal is, and I've opened up a line of communication with our Dorset Health colleagues. We've spoken about underage drinking. We've spoken about representations on behalf of public health for applications. And I'm now talking to them about our support services for gambling addictions, because I want to try and get a grip of how we're doing. So my proposal is, with your blessing, I suppose, to look at what's on offer, where it's on offer, and try and make sure it's in the right places and it's adequate. And if it isn't, then to try and get it to a better state. So that's my sort of response in relation to that. And all of the other responses I think I've covered in the report, but again, I'm more than happy to answer any questions or run through any specific issues as your committee see fit. Chair, thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for engaging as well, John, with regards to the gambling addiction, because you know, it is a really big concern, and you know, I think that there is more that possibly could be done, but I'm really grateful that you're carrying that bit of work forward. Thank you. Does anybody have any questions with regards to the gambling licensing policy?
Just briefly, just a question. Because we put... Pardon? Oh, sorry, yeah. Yeah, forgive me. Yeah, Derek Beer, member for Shaftesbury. Just to, and maybe I should have read it, just to clarify for me, when we talk about support, what do we mean by support? I deal with mental health support, and we're in touch with those services which are there. Just for my own peace of mind, when I go and give advice in the future, what is support, and how far is it? How easy is it to access? Do you know? If this isn't the time, then we do it another time. But if you can answer that briefly, that would be good. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, of course. So we have a number of national bodies which are part financed by the gambling industry. Their effectiveness, in my humble opinion, is potentially questionable. So we have sort of Gamble Aware, which is a national helpline people can call in. And there have been some inroads in relation to gambling support, responsible gambling, and seeking help. However, it doesn't appear to be enough, because we still see a lot of problems. We still see a lot of people getting into financial difficulties and gambling beyond their means. And we see the knock-on effect that has on families and on other addictions and homelessness, losing jobs, etc. So my approach is to look at what we're doing locally as well. So we do have some fantastic stakeholders that we work with. We have a number of voluntary organisations that we also deal with. However, my take on where we are in gambling support is a bit fuzzy at the moment. and I need to clarify where we are and what have we got in place. Where are we suffering problems? Typically, it's in areas of deprivation. We know that some of our wards have higher deprivation levels than others. So I'm going to take away a piece of homework, if you like, to look at where the problems are arising, to take that latest data from the Gambling Commission and to adapt that for local needs and requirements, and then if necessary we'll deal with that through our local area profiles. So gambling operators, they need to have local area profiles, and we're really good at dealing with our betting shops and adult gaming centres, our normal premises that we regulate. However, a lot of these harms are online harms. But I want to look at what we're doing locally, look at what we're offering, and if it's inadequate, try and get some additional resource put in place. So I'm happy to bring back a further update to the committee once we've got that piece of work underway.
Thanks, John. Do we have any further questions?
Councillor Susan Cocking, Portland Ward. John, could I suggest perhaps working with the local town councils, particularly in the response to that one, because I think that would be quite good, because they would actually have more local knowledge and feedback from there, and perhaps the local councillors, perhaps in specific wards. It's just a suggestion, but I just think sometimes they have actually more idea of actually what's happening underneath the surface and everything. So if there's demographics and if there's some data around what are the hotspots in Dorset, perhaps work with local councils, because I think that would be a good network system for you to find out some more about the issues and how you can help. And they might know some other support networks that aren't perhaps national. They may be more local and more intervention than anything else, but it's just a suggestion.
Yes, of course, no problem.
Thank you. Do we have any further questions? Okay, well, I'm going to obviously the recommendations, and I'm going to take them on the recommendations on block. Yep. So it's to review, which we've done, to review the responses received during the consultation period, and to consider, so we want to consider the proposed amendments of the draft statement of the gambling and licensing policy, which I think we're happy with the amendments that have been made. It's a really, really good, robust policy. And then to make our recommendations for full council in relation to adoption of the draft statement of the gambling policy. Can I have a proposer?
Can I propose that, Chair?
Thank you. And can I have a seconder, please?
I'm Councillor Brian Heatley, Robin Wycombe, Weymouth. Can I second, please?
And all in favour? And that's carried. Thank you very much. Okay, so agenda item 6, we've got the statement of licensing policy, and this is the review of the cumulative impact area. And I will now hand over to John. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, the second report is it's a bit of a strange one, this, because the licensing policy used to be every 3 years, and then the rules were relaxed ever so slightly to require review every 5 years. However, 5 years is quite a long time, and cumulative impact assessments, the data changes regularly. So the guidance, this Section 182 statutory guidance, indicates that any cumulative impact areas should be reviewed every 3 years. So we still do this every 3 years. That being said, there will be a major review of the licensing policy. So this is licensing pubs and clubs, alcohol, entertainment, obviously. Just I know you already know that, but just to remind others that may wonder what a cumulative impact zone is. So it's where we've got a proliferation of premises and quite a high level of harm, alcohol-related harm, and so we seek to limit the number of new premises unless they're substantially different to the existing offer or unlikely to add to the problems in the area. So there's a presumption that there will be a refusal. It is rebuttable, however, it adds an additional hurdle where you've got places that are suffering. That being said, our cumulative impact area is in Weymouth Town Centre. It used to be a very vibrant place. It has suffered significantly as a result of COVID and the national trend, licensed premises closing. I looked this up the other day, Chair. I think it's two premises a week are closing in England and Wales, which is really worrying because a lot of licensed premises, pubs in particular, on sales premises can be heart of community. So it is a worrying trend. So actually we're having a bit of a rethink on this. That being said, there are still issues there. So the proposal is to retain the existing CIA, and there is some supporting data that our analysts have pulled together to justify that decision should the committee be minded to support retention. And then, of course, we put that proposal out to consultation, and we got quite a few responses back, which is good. Again, apologies that it's only a 4-week consultation. I will do better next time. We'll have a full 12-week one as well. But we do have a really good mechanism here in Dorset where we do a consultation. It is thorough. It does go out to everybody, and word gets around. It's very well publicised, and we've got a sort of a well-oiled machine, if you like. So I'm confident that we've met the statutory standard, if not the best practice. So 36 responses. The vast majority, I think it comes up to just around 80%, were in favour of retaining the CIA, including about a quarter of the respondents asking for it to be expanded. Now, of course, we've looked at each and every one of those responses. I've summarised those within the report. Just to note, before I move on, just 2 responses in favour of removing the CIA. So you know, quite an overwhelming response in support of retention or expansion. So there are some additional areas that have been proposed: Chapel Hay, Park District, Hope Square, Radipole Park, by the Weymouth Yacht Club, northern end of King Street, down by St John's Church in Greenhill, and then also over by the Rodwell Trail. So we will look at those. I don't have the data to support expansion into those areas at the moment because we don't have the levels of alcohol-related crime and disorder that would ordinarily justify such an expansion. However, I did give an undertaking, Chair, last time we met to review this, but to wider review it as well, not just to have a one-dimensional look at should we expand it and if so where, but actually is it working? Is it necessary? Is it proportionate? Does it actually stifle growth? Is it good for economic development? Is it good for the nighttime economy? And does it, you know, Weymouth is a relatively safe place to go out at night. We have a lot of initiatives that work really well. We have our Purple Flag Award, we have Safe Space, we have our CSAS patrols, we have our Shop Watch, our Pub Watch. You know, we're set up for it to be a good night out. That's not to say there aren't issues, but we are sort of victims of our own success because alcohol-related crime disorder is falling year on year. It is much better than it was. And actually, if we want to see that inward investment into Weymouth Town Centre, for new premises to open where old ones have closed. There's always going to be churn. We see that in food premises and licensed premises. But if we want to attract investment, I think we may need to look at this. My proposal is that if you're in agreement, committee, that we retain it this year based on the data and the responses, and potentially as part of that 5-yearly licensing policy review, we have a really good look at whether we actually need it long term, whether we should keep it going forward. Now, we did meet with the police, and that's the conclusion we both came to as the licensing authority and the police. That being said, it's a matter of opinion at the moment without the facts and the study to back it up. So we need that academic piece of work first. So again, this needs to be in by the 1st of Feb. I've listed all of the responses. We've got the data for the cumulative impact assessment. Happy to answer any questions. I think the one in particular, which I was going to pop through them, wasn't I? Let me pop this down. Yeah, so street drinking. I did just want to touch on that briefly, if I may. So my department, or the licensing service, covers four different services actually. So licensing, which is pubs and clubs, gambling, street trading, etc. Community safety, which is our CSAS patrols, our ASB officers, our community safety partnership coordinating groups. We also cover CCTV, and we also cover environmental enforcement, so fly tipping, etc., abandoned vehicles. So I have got quite a good idea of what's going on and where we see problems. And we do have some issues with street drinkers, but we've made huge progress with that. You know, if there are any off licence that are overstepping the mark and supplying alcohol to people that are drunk and causing issues, we deal with them. They get a visit and potentially enforcement action. As you know, we're very robust with our enforcement. We've revoked licences recently for breaches of conditions, and our main issue really with the street drinkers is where they get a bit lively. They've had a bit too much to drink, and we have to rein them in a bit. And our CSAS patrol officers, which has recently been expanded to 8, and our CCTV team and the police all work together in partnership for that. Now, we can't keep moving them on. We can't eradicate them from Weymouth Town Centre and the seafront. However, we do seek to manage their behaviour. And if they do overstep the mark, then we do intervene. And we have issued fixed penalty notices for alcohol consumption and antisocial behaviour. We have our public spaces protection orders, which we expanded in 2021. And we've also made some real progress with partnership working with our off licences in terms of high ABV alcohol availability, but that's a piece of ongoing work, so that's work in progress. So there is a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes. I do understand, especially some of the hoteliers and the guest house owners down in Weymouth get increasingly frustrated. But the recent 100 Days of Summer operation that we ran with the police, where we did high visibility patrols, actually resulted, and Weymouth was unique in that for Dorset, saw a 40% reduction in ASB. And I went to a Hotel Watch meeting a few weeks ago, which was quite lively to start with, but actually when I presented the facts and the evidence backed up by the police who were there with me, even some of the local guest houses had to admit that actually it's a lot better this year than it's been in previous years. So we are making progress, although it's not perfect. I get that. There's still a lot of work to do. So yeah, I just briefly wanted to touch on street drinking, and then I've also I've commented about doing that wider piece of study, which is again another piece of homework for us to take away, myself and my brilliant team to work on, to look and see if we can bring something a little bit more three-dimensional back for you, looking at the wider picture next time prior to the policy review. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, John. Any questions for John or comments? Councillor Beer.
Derek Beer from Shaftesbury. I've always been seen as a little bit of a softie, and I'm going to be seen as a bit of a softie now. Your introductory comments talked about the worrying trend of premises closing. And then you spoke very well about the measures taking place to make sure that Weymouth is a peaceful place. I recently completed some judging or assessment of areas and how volunteers got involved and how things happen. And I had to say that Weymouth came bottom of my 68 places I visited because of the welcome and the categorising of places to be a bit scary. And when you arrive at Weymouth, you get bombarded with the CCTVs watching you. Don't you dare drink here, because there were so many notices about what a bad place it was to be. And you can understand why people suddenly think, well, we can't go to pubs because we're going to be categorised as nasty people. So I think some sort of discretion and some sort of, let's not get too panicky about things, but let's be a bit more welcoming to our premises and those who drink and whatever. And let's have some messages of say, yes, family friendly. It isn't all scary. You won't get shot at dawn if you do these things. And just a little bit more of a gentle approach to the welcome to Weymouth and say, yes, this is a good place to be. They're decent places and they are well run, and let's not keep pushing. And maybe I get it wrong, but not keep pushing, whoa, this is dangerous, and whatever, because it's no wonder places have shut, because the welcome, especially with my team of judges that arrived, was pretty darn poor, right from the first. The toilets are shut because of vandalism and all this sort of thing. Let's just stop it and take a deep breath and take a fresher approach. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I think that's kind of where we're coming from, to have a fresh look at that, to look at the tourism side of things, economic development, Purple Flag. We recently were awarded some significant funding from the Home Office under Safer Streets 5. Now, we're using that to make Weymouth safer, so there'll be some more additional CCTV. We're still having some problems with getting some of our previous installs working, of course, but I'm working with our contractors on that. But actually, we've got some money for a project called Licensing Savvy, which is a little bit like Best Bar None. It's led by the police, but it's an accreditation process. We're a safe premises, basically. So, you know, come in, drink with us, socialise in here, and we'll look after you, even if something goes wrong. So it's that kind of approach. But I do wholeheartedly support that. I think we're in a position now where actually the tide is turning. We've dealt with a lot of our less than brilliant operators. We've got a really good bunch now. Not just in licensed on-trade, but off-trade as well, and also across our licensed trade, so taxis included in that. So we have made a lot of progress. We are robust in our enforcement, and it now might be time to have a fresh look at this and to see if we can actually encourage investment and new premises, and see if we can get back to the heyday of when Weymouth was the place to come to if you wanted a really good, safe, fun night out. So that is the view. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Do we have any further questions? Brian?
Thank you, Chair. I think I've only been on one licensing subcommittee, which is an application for within the impact area, cumulative impact area, and that was one we agreed. So the policy had no effect in practice. I'm wondering whether in recent years we've actually refused many. I don't know.
I'm happy to answer that, Chair. I'm not aware that we've had an application, so it needs to be a new premise or a significant variation. We do a lot of work behind the scenes. I know you know that already, I don't need to tell you, but we work with a lot of our applicants. So when they need help doing applications themselves, or when they've got agents. And one of the key questions that always comes into us is about the cumulative impact zone. Am I likely to be successful? And we help them. We look at their offer, we look at their hours, we look at the activities, we look at their history, do that due diligence. And if we think it's not likely to succeed, we'll say that. You know, we wouldn't fetter discretion by sort of usurping your decision-making process, but we'll give an honest opinion. And I think it does put people off. And I think that's what the problem we're trying to address, because I think if someone's got... It costs a lot of money to open a new licensed premises. I mean, if I had to pluck a figure out of the sky, we're probably talking at least a couple of £100,000. And so you're going to invest that somewhere wisely, aren't you? And if you look at a licensed area and you see that there's a policy that says we're probably going to say no, you're going to look somewhere else, aren't you? So, and I think we do have quite a few vacant premises in Weymouth. We do have a couple of our larger venues which have closed down, which, you know, are desperate pieces of beautiful architecture that if they were brought back to life would make a huge difference. So I think that's kind of where we're coming from, that I don't think we've refused an application. I'm not aware of one, not in the last 3 or 4 years anyway. I think it's more that people are put off by putting them in the first place. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Any further questions? Okay, I will now come over to Councillor Orrell, who is the ward member. Is there any questions or comments that you would like to make?
Thank you, Chair. So John Orrell, member for Melcombe Regis, which is Weymouth Town Centre. I don't come to the licensing committee ever, but I'm here today because I saw this on the agenda and I'm really keen that you keep the cumulative impact zone. As you can see from the resident feedback, it is popular, and despite some amelioration in recent years, it remains necessary. My biggest post bag is parking. My second biggest one is complaints about people who are drunk. So, and they divide into two groups. We've touched on both today. The street drinker one, which has come in here with the proposed extensions of the zone, that's more to deal with the daytime street drinkers. That's not what this policy is for. That should be dealt with by the Public Space Protection Order. So we can put to bed the extension, I think, because that's a separate problem than this one. This is more the pubs and clubs which operate in the evening and night. It's useful to have this policy and then to be magnanimous in its interpretation, but to still have it, because we've had some premises that have been wildly out of control, verging on the criminal, and caused a lot of disturbance and crime. And to have this policy meant we could intervene on those few. The vast majority of the premises are well run, and we don't need to implement the policy, but it's really important to have it able to be used. So that's the kind of big argument for having it there. I'm all for encouraging new businesses. In fact, over the last 5 years, we've seen an evolution of the drinking culture in Weymouth, away from some of the nighttime nightclubs and towards more family-friendly drinking around the harbour. So if you've seen some of the changes that Ray Bryan's introduced, railway lines removed, more seating areas, it's a much more family-friendly area, and hopefully we ought to be fairly flexible in the interpretation of the area as we move to develop the peninsula, which we'd hoped to make mixed with housing and more offer to tourists and residents. So great. I recommend and encourage you to support the continuation of the policy and to allow officers to be flexible in its implementation. Thanks.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I think that is our proposal, is that we do retain the policy in its the cumulative impact area in its current state without extension, and that is backed up by the responses, 80% support retention, although 25% of the respondents actually wanted it to be expanded. It's a really interesting point Councillor Orrell makes about the PSPOs, because they are due for review next year. So I'll look at those. I'll look at these responses that we've had, even though this is coming on different policy, it's clearly related. And we'll look at those stats, we'll look at those figures, we'll look at the complaints that we have in to the ASB team and also the police complaints. And we'll see if that's justified, then we'll expand the PSPOs. We've got much better at enforcing those as well. So we've got a much bigger team. We've got 8 CSAS, as I mentioned earlier. So, and we are running out of patience with prolific offenders, shall I say. So those people that don't rein in their poor behaviour, they're getting community protection warnings, they're getting community protection notices, they're getting criminal behaviour orders, so we're taking them through the courts. So we are dealing with those, working with the police. I think we've done about 84 in the last couple of years, so we've really ramped up the ante. But I will take that, and I'll take that recommendation on that we review that. So that is our proposal, Chair, that we retain the CIA, and I bring back a fuller, more comprehensive report to a future committee when we do the full 5-year licensing policy review, which may include some other issues. I'm sure the government will have another medal with licensing. They like to have a play with it. Well, we may well get a different government, so we may well get further meddling. So I don't know, I don't know where we'll be, but we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. But yes, Councillor is correct that it is a useful tool as it stands, and our recommendation is that it remains. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'm the ward councillor for the ward on the other side of the harbour. And so a number of the places that are mentioned here for extension are actually in my ward. Chapel Hay, Hope Square, the Yacht Club, and the Rodwell Trail all pretty much lie in my patch. I think the concerns about them are about antisocial behaviour and street drinking. They're not really anything to do with this. And that's a particular point I'd like to make. Generally, I have to say that the consultation response that stood out was the one from a member of the public who addressed the long list of places that have shut since 2013 and a slightly shorter list of places whose hours had become less extreme. And I think essentially proposed that we do need to review it. And I entirely support that. Let's keep it for now, but let's review it. Thank you.
Sorry, Chair. I totally agree with Councillor's words there. I think it's just important to note that there's nothing in this policy that precludes you from granting a licence. If someone comes before you, they might not even come before you, so it needs an objection to start with. So even if it's in the CIA and someone puts an application in for a new premises or a significant variation, if there aren't any objections, then it gets granted by delegated authority. But if there are objections, there's nothing to stop you granting. If it looks like a good offer, it looks like it's going to be well run and of benefit to the community, then of course they're going to get a favourable response, aren't they? So it's kind of, I think it may be drawing close to the end of its lifeline, but we're not quite there yet. It probably needs a really good look at from a wider piece. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Any further comments? No? Okay, again, I'm going to take this one on block. You've got the recommendations there. That's to review the responses received during the consultation period, which we've just gone through, to consider the review of the cumulative impact area contained within the statement of the licensing policy, and then to make a recommendation to full council in relation to the cumulative impact area contained within the statement of licensing policy, and then to commission a further report into the long-term effects and retaining cumulative impact as part of the next policy review. Can I have a proposer, please?
I'm happy to propose, Chair. Councillor John Andrews, Sherwood.
Thank you. Thank you. And all of those that are in favour? Thank you. That's all agreed and carried. Before I go on to the next item on the agenda, I would just like to say thank you to our licensing team for both of these policies. I know you work really, really hard and you all work very, very well together, and I'm really grateful to have a really, really good bunch of officers. So thank you for two really, really good reports again. And also I would like to thank all of the people that made comments, because that really, really is a big help to us, and we do take those comments seriously, and we do take all comments on board. And thank you, Councillor Roll, for attending and your comments. That's been very, very useful. Okay, agenda item 7, urgent items. We don't have any urgent items, and we have no exempt business, so I will now draw this meeting to a close. Thank you for all attending.
Chair.